and thanks for having me. So this is what we know at the present time. So wealthy suburbs, which are cool, and less affluent suburbs, or with a lot of people suffering disadvantage and energy poverty in the hottest areas. However, that information is not just enough. Also, we know that during heat waves, the urban heat becomes stronger. So because the westerly winds are coming in, uh, and also to get a better picture of the situation, as Sebastian has shown, you can deploy a lot of sensors in the urban environment, but also we need more information, more local information. The black dots are the BUM weather stations, which are at airports or race courses where nobody lives because you have horses and your airplanes. Uh, and therefore, we needed to have some urban weather stations. This is actually hosted by Western Sydney University that we installed, and then we are crossing all Sydney, and the yellow ones are also installed by UNSW. Uh, so providing high quality information. We also installed a network of weather stations in the LGA of Parramatta, and this shows what happens during a heat wave, and this was the last days of 2018. So the solid lines are actually the stations in Parramatta, and the dashed lines are those from BUM. Again, measurements, not modeling, not interpolation. And the thing that's happening is that within the urban environment, the ambient temperature are hotter and hotter and closer to the set point for cooling. So you won't be able to just open the window and cool down your house anymore in the future. You might need to run the aircon also nighttime. It's not just the daytime temperature. Um, then looking, going down in the rabbit hole of the urban environment, again, we move from city scale, from regional scale to LGA scale, and then we go to micro scale. And this is the CBD of Parramatta. And this we see that during a summer afternoon, this was 1st of March of 18, so we collected data with transects, with weather stations all around, and then we had our vehicle with a movable weather station, and we took measurements at all these points. And this is what we saw, that the hottest parts of the CBD are kind of 3 degrees hotter than where we had our station, and also some portions of the river here are 3 degrees cooler. So there's a almost 6 degrees temperature difference between these 2 points, because from the river we have an inflow of cool air, so we have the sea breeze penetrating the city. So this is very much important to understand what to do and how not to block this influx of air. So it's not just all about urban design, it's much more complicated. uh, Another thing that we saw was achieved by flying with a drone and spotting all the hot roofs all over the CBD and the car parks. Again, bringing up the attention on how we manage all these urban spaces, which reach 55 degrees or more, and then you switch on the car and the aircon at maximum power. In another area in Epping, again, Parramatta LGA, we saw that you have green spaces, well irrigated, the sports field, and you have some other spaces which are not well irrigated. This is just a small one. Uh, but it shows that those spaces can reach 60 degrees. So actually, grass can be as hard as concrete or more if it's not actively maintained. What are the effects of all of this? Heat-related mortality. On average, these are all epidemiological studies over the past 30 years. On average, 60 deaths per year in the Greater Sydney area. Some years, 130, 140. We'll see what will be of this year, because also of the bushfire. What what's for the future? These, of course, are now not measured data, because those are extrapolations. The future tells us that in the future we will have more and more heat waves. So we will have heat-related mortality for longer and more intense. And all mitigation that we can do will not be enough. So we can plant more trees, put more cool roofing, but it will not be enough. We can achieve some containment of the situation, but this is just bracing for impact. We have to do more. Elsewhere, these are data from Europe, from Italy. They did a monitoring about all the actions that they undertook, including surveillance, deploying the GPs, providing extra care to vulnerable population. Yes, they brought down the attributable fraction of deaths, but they didn't bring it to zero. So still was not sufficient. So we say, okay, we can go for what do we have to do? We have to act on buildings. Again, this is the 2003 heat wave in Europe, and this is Milan, my hometown. Work I've done some years ago before moving to Australia. So again, these are the heat-related deaths measured, and this is the body balance. And actually, you have the peaks in heat-related deaths when inside the building you cannot cool, when you cannot go below that dashed line. So is the response air conditioning? Might not be, because when you have the heat wave is when you have the peaks in the electricity demand and in increasing cost in transactions. So we can provide a price cap, or we can find better solutions, but it might not be, again, also that be enough. Also because, as I mentioned, it's when you have the night temperatures exceeding the set point for cooling, the thermostat temperature, that you bring up the electricity consumption and have very deadly heat waves, because there's no relief. And also, there's no relief because beyond a certain temperature, air conditioning fails. So the efficiency of air conditioning decreases with increasing temperatures, and beyond a certain point, it's not working properly anymore, and you have failure. So some solutions, of course, those were mentioned, and you see here the black spot. It's actually a white roof detected with a flight with our drone flight over a shopping mall in Nara, and it was a project together with BlueScope and Stockland, funded by CRC. So you see here that white roof is actually out of the scale below at 30 degrees, while the hottest portions here exceed 80 degrees of metal unfinished roof, conventional roofing. Another thing, of course, is to avoid mirror-like surfaces reflecting downwards all the solar radiation. These are the first two measures that need to be undertaken to avoid overheating our cities, and having people experiencing walking around a kitchen stove. And this was taken in Parramatta. Of course, we can improve the thermal comfort outdoors, and this is in Darwin. It's actually the construction is finished, and it should look soon like this, hopefully, if the creeper grows. And we are performing a monitoring on the ambient temperature and thermal comfort up there. But as mentioned before, we cannot just walk on the outside. We have to work a lot on the inside. Sebastian has shown some fantastic images of what our cities, our neighborhoods should look like. Unfortunately, we have a lot of social housing looking like this, where indoors, that again measured data of a project we closed last year, indoors 40 degrees, and during winter time 10 degrees, because people cannot afford to operate heating or cooling, experiencing a lot of heat stress, and also more growth on top of that. This is in western suburbs, and this is in eastern suburbs. So we have to improve our buildings anywhere we can do it. We can lower the energy consumption of buildings, of residential buildings or office buildings, with mitigation. Of course, we can bring it down. This is the future. This is the present. From M2 to M4 is 2050. This is 2050 if we don't do anything, and this is 2050 if we mitigate it. Again, mitigation is not enough. It's very important, but it's not enough. And even building energy conservation, we can bring it down very much to the level where we can cope with renewables, but it's not enough. So we have to use more aggressive strategies. We have to undertake actions. So what do we need? In green, we have what we are covered actually. Namely, we have a great epidemiologists offering epidemiologic analysis and a very efficient healthcare system. Here we're working on it. As we saw, we are implementing it very rapidly, having a building stock model, but this is what we need. We need an implementation of heat mitigation Sydney-wide, not just one council, because otherwise it's like operating air conditioning outdoors. Hot air will flow in from any side if you don't mitigate Sydney-wide at a regional scale. We need DSPs to prevent stupid things. So brutally said, and promote zero energy buildings. We can do it, but we have to enforce it. And then also we have to retrofit buildings Sydney-wide, because we cannot wait for the 2% replacement rate, and which is pretty fast in Italy, where I come from. It's 1% replacement rate of the building stock. And of course, inspections to make sure that what is on paper gets delivered on site. So to conclude, there's no silver bullet to solve the problem, unfortunately. Planting trees is not a silver bullet alone, so you cannot just plant trees. You cannot just rely on co-roofing. I love co-roofing. I love trees. Air conditioning and living indoors, and you cannot just seal yourself inside. And unfortunately, business as usual is a silver bullet instead, but towards our head. So not a brilliant one.